Okay, welcome. Hi everyone, my name is Edward Name and I'm the General Manager of Amazon FSx. I'm really excited to be here. Honestly, it feels good to be back in Vegas, good to be back with customers, with all of you. Appreciate the folks who have traveled out here to be with us live this week to learn about AWS offerings and interact with the service teams and give us feedback. And thanks for folks who are joining remotely as well. I'm really eager to see how well we can reach folks and engage with them virtually. I'm joined today by Andy Crudge, who's a Principal Product Manager on the FSx team, and by Norm Nato, who's the VP of Site Reliability at Pearson. So they will also be part of the presentation and coming on stage in a little bit. And today's session is about simplifying your file-based workloads with Amazon FSx. And we'll start with an overview of the FSx family, and then we'll dive deep into two areas that FSx is focused on for helping customers. So the first is moving or extending existing applications and storage to the cloud, and the second is building new data-intensive workloads on the cloud. And we'll also touch on a variety of the fully automated data management capabilities that FSx provides that simplify how you manage and how you secure your data on the cloud and at scale. And then Norm will be sharing his and Pearson's journey with FSx, and that'll give you a feel for FSx in real-world action. So I'm excited about that part. Okay, before we get to FSx, let's actually start by taking a step back. Why are customers moving their applications and their data to AWS? Well, there are really 5 common reasons. The first is elasticity. AWS's virtually unlimited infrastructure enables scaling flexibility that you just can't get on premises. The second is functionality. And think about things like AWS's rich set of instance types, its wide breadth of storage offerings, its advanced automation and orchestration services, robust networking and security controls, rich visualization solutions, advanced machine learning offerings. Those are just a few examples of some of the functionality that you get. Agility. AWS gives you the ability to spin up and spin down resources on demand, meaning that it's really easy to experiment and iterate quickly, try things and fail fast. Burst resources to be able to process data faster when you need to. And then fourth, global infrastructure. With AWS's worldwide regions and its local zone footprint, placing infrastructure near your users or near your customers is super easy. It's as easy as a mouse click. And then finally, cost optimized. With AWS, you pay for only what you use, and you really get to take advantage of the infrastructure innovations that we're continually making that result in lower costs that we pass on in the form of lower prices. And these things really translate into 2 things for customers. The first is better ROI, and the second is faster time to results. And those are the things that customers tell us when they say, why are they moving at the speeds they are to AWS? And why do customers use file storage? Well, first of all, it provides a really simple experience. File storage, file systems, shared file systems appear like local directories and files to your users and to your applications, and they work natively with your operating system's APIs and your operating system's GUIs. They provide shared access, of course, so you can have multiple users, multiple computers, multiple applications, all touching the same set of data and all working with the same set of data. High performance. File systems are built and they're optimized for high levels of throughput, high levels of IOPS, really low latencies, near local latencies. That's core to what file systems are really designed for. And then rich data capabilities. So think about things like snapshots and cloning and file locking and advanced memory caching. And for these reasons, there's over 100 exabytes of file storage that's on premises today used with existing applications. And then at the same time, file fuels a really broad spectrum of net new, cloud native, data intensive workloads like machine learning, data modeling and visualization, video transcoding, so a pretty broad mix. And the thing with file storage is it's used ubiquitously for so many workloads, so it's no surprise that there isn't a one-sized file system that meets all needs. And so there are many file systems out there. And each offers a unique combination of feature sets, performance characteristics, data management capabilities, cost profiles. And so as a result, because there are all of these options out there and each file system is kind of optimized for different things, if you have a workload that's running on an existing file storage solution today, it can be pretty time consuming and pretty costly to move to a different solution. You have to re-architect, you have to retest. It's work, and there's technical risk, etc. And if you're building a new application, you really want to be able to choose a solution that's optimized for your specific application's needs. So, maybe it's a performance-focused application. Maybe there's an application that requires a set of advanced data management capabilities that makes it easier for your application to be able to work with data. So that's why there's a lot of file systems out there. That's why there's a lot of file systems that people use. What that translates into is migrating existing workloads, as I mentioned, can require re-architecting, recertifying, retraining, and then building these new workloads. You generally want to be able to optimize for the specifics of that workload. And because no one-size file system meets all needs, we have Amazon FSx. And FSx stands for File System X. And what does the X represent in File System X? Well, X means your choice of file system technology used for whatever workload you choose. So really replace the X with the file system type and the workload type. And that's why we call it FSx or File System X. And so what do we mean by your choice? Well, with FSx, you can launch, run, and scale feature-rich, highly performant, cost-effective, fully managed storage powered by your choice of the world's most popular file systems. And so the 4 file systems that we have on FSx are listed here. The first 2 we launched 3 years ago, FSx for Windows File Server and FSx for Lustre. FSx for Windows File Server is based on Windows Server. It's a native SMB file system for a broad set of Windows workloads and Windows environments. Lustre is a scale-out file system that's used heavily for machine learning, for high-performance computing, for things like video transcoding, really compute-intensive, compute-heavy workloads where you want to drive a lot of throughput or a lot of high aggregate IOPS. FSx for Netapp Ontap is a new service that we launched, a new file system that we launched about 3 months ago, a little less than 3 months ago. Super excited about this one. It is a full, complete version of Ontap, everything that's part of Ontap, married with all of the benefits of the cloud. So full management, the ability to spin up and spin down, all of the agility that you would expect, the ability to tier between SSD storage and fully elastic, low-cost, longer-term storage. We launched it 3 months ago, and already in the first 3 months, it's really resonated with customers to the point that it's actually so far, one of our fastest growing AWS services ever. So I think it really speaks to how customers are using it, how the model resonates with them, et cetera. And then finally, really excited that today, actually we announced our 4th FSx file system, which is FSx for OpenZFS. For those of you who are familiar with OpenZFS, it's a highly scalable file system, highly resilient file system. It's used for a pretty broad spectrum of Linux-based workloads, and people generally love OpenZFS. What they don't love about it is managing it. It's actually very complicated to manage and to tune, and so we're now offering a fully managed version of OpenZFS as part of FSx. And then what are some example workloads? So by providing fully managed, high performance, low cost storage with all of the rich capabilities of these widely used industry standard file systems, FSx is used for a really, really broad set of workloads. Everything from what you could think of as traditional corporate IT applications to database applications, home directories, software build environments, HPC, machine learning, media rendering and transcoding, big data and analytics. And behind each of these use cases, I can think of just so many customers that are doing so many interesting things with each. It's really exciting to see how people are using FSx. And by providing what it does, Amazon FSx has changed the game for file storage in the cloud. And it does that in two ways. The first is it makes it super easy to move or to extend existing applications in storage that are file-based to the cloud. And then the second is if you're building new data-intensive type applications, it's the ideal choice for a wide range of those applications. And what do I mean by data-intensive applications or workloads? Well, those are workloads that have high transactional processing of data, so really high levels of IOPS, or ones that process large data sets at massive scale, so really high throughput, all with a goal of analyzing and training, experimenting, or in some way transforming data. So for the first one, how does it make it super easy to move or extend? Well, with FSx, what you have is what you get. And so that's really about the file system choice. So if you're running a particular file system today on premises, or you're self-managing one on the cloud, FSx has that, but fully managed and really simple, with a lot of additional capabilities on top of it that makes it really easy for you to do more with your data. Second, it provides the broadest set of cost management capabilities of any file storage on the cloud. So everything from compression to deduplication to compaction to advanced tiering between SSD tiers and lower cost, fully elastic tiers. Cost management capabilities we know are very, very important within the storage space, something we focus a lot on. And then we make it really easy to access your data from virtually anywhere. Of course, really easy within the cloud, whether you're using EC2 or some of our container services, or you're accessing it using something like SageMaker, making it really easy to access from virtually anywhere, but also from on-premises. So a lot of customers, for example, they'll move their data to the cloud, but they'll still want local access from users that are on premises. And so we make it really easy for that to happen. And we also do some interesting things that allow people to be able to even burst some of their data from on premises to the cloud, use it within FSx, and use compute against that data. And then for building new data intensive workloads. So it provides bleeding edge performance. Andy will get into some of the details on that. But in terms of scale, we support terabytes per second of throughput. In terms of scale out, we support millions of IOPS, sub-millisecond latencies. So depending on which FSx file system you select and what your needs are, you can get to that level of scale. Our newest file system, OpenZFS, actually has latencies as low as 200 microseconds. So for super ultra latency sensitive workloads. And then continual improvement of price performance, something we focus very, very heavily on. An example of that is something that we also launched today at reInvent, which is what we're calling next generation FSx for Lustre file systems. Those file systems are Graviton based. They're using a new disk technology that provides ultra low latencies. And the result is a significant price performance reduction compared to current Lustre file systems, and also the ability to scale to 4 times higher the level of throughput. So really excited to announce something like that, and it gives an example of how we're continually focused on price performance. And then finally, easy experimentation at scale. All of our file systems give a really rich set of capabilities for doing, for manipulating data and working with data, regardless of the size of your data set. And Andy will talk about some of those capabilities like cloning when he talks. And so let me share an example of a customer that is easily moving applications to FSx, so that first group of migration. Holland Group is an Australian construction company, and they lost access to over 90 critical business applications and documents and data due to a failure in their legacy storage environment. And Holland Group was able to perform essentially an emergency migration to Amazon FSx for Windows File Server. And specifically, they launched and ran a new environment on AWS within hours, and they migrated over 90 key applications within 48 hours. And through the migration, Not only did they get out of the pain that they were in before, which was the unavailability they had on premises with their legacy file system, but they significantly enhanced their posture. So much higher performing file system, much higher availability model, a lot more long-term stability, a lot more functionality. And they were able to get there so fast, 90 applications in an emergency in 48 hours, because FSx is designed to make it super easy to move from NAS on-prem to the cloud. And a quote from Keir Morrison, who's the GM of IT operations at Holland, is that Amazon FSx for Windows File Server hasn't missed a beat. The speed, the stability, and the ability to tune throughput speed and availability to our environment are quite positive for us. And then, but before I hand it over to Andy, let me talk about one more customer example. And this is an example of accelerating a data-intensive workload using Amazon FSx. So for those who aren't familiar with Blackthorn Therapeutics, they're a clinical stage biopharma company. They're focused on the discovery and the development of targeted medicine for the treatment of central nervous system disorders. And their challenge was that they process a lot of MRI data, and they're doing a lot of machine learning on that MRI data. And they were doing it using a standard DIY cloud file system, or a set of DIY cloud file systems. And those file systems just didn't scale to the performance levels they needed. They could clearly see that they were bottlenecking their compute. And also those file systems took a lot of effort to run and to manage. And so what Blackthorn needed was a scalable, shared file storage solution that would scale with their compute needs, would scale with their data set, and was fully managed. And so Amazon FSx for Lustre is what they chose, and they provided, they got high performance storage that reduced processing times by orders of magnitude. And in addition, because FSx for Lustre is integrated with S3 and with SageMaker, they were able to actually build some pretty unique ML processing workflows very easily. And a quote from Oscar Rodriguez, who's a senior director of innovation and technology at Blackthorn, said, FSx for Lustre has enabled us to create a high-performance MRI data processing pipeline. Data processing time for our ML-based workflows was cut down to minutes compared to days and weeks. So really, again, orders of magnitude difference in performance, which meant really significant business results. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Andy, who's going to walk through some more details.
All right, thanks, Ed. And hey, everyone. Quick introduction for my part. My name is Andy Crudge. I'm a product manager on the Amazon FSx team. And for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to be diving into some of these areas that Ed talked about. As Ed mentioned, we've really designed Amazon FSx to make it easy for customers, either who have existing file-based applications, to move or extend these applications to the cloud, but also for customers who are looking to build net new data-driven workloads to be able to do so much more easily and much more quickly with Amazon FSx. So I'm going to start by diving into the first area, customers with existing applications and some of the things that FSx provides that makes it easy for customers to move or extend these applications to the cloud. So first is what you have is what you get. And as Ed mentioned, this is really around FSx providing a choice of popular file systems that act the way that you would expect them to. The second is FSx provides the broadest range of cost management capabilities of any file storage service in the cloud. And as Ed mentioned, this is, we see from customers, cost savings features are very important to storage customers. And also reducing costs is a big reason why some customers are looking to move to the cloud and are excited about moving to the cloud. And lastly, data access from virtually anywhere. We see customers deploying their storage and their compute in the cloud in one region, in multiple regions. AWS offers 25 regions today, and also are looking to sometimes access their data from on-premises. And so as part of enabling customers to easily migrate over to the cloud, a big part of that is making sure that that data is accessible wherever customers' clients reside. So digging into the first one, what you see is what you get. As we talked about before, Amazon FSx is really built to provide complete, fully managed deployments of popular file systems with the familiar features and APIs that these file systems provide. And this may seem like a trivial thing, but for a lot of the customers we talk to, this is a really big deal. Because we talk to a lot of customers who are used to using a particular file system technology. Maybe they've built their IT applications, their processes, their workflows around particular file systems, and providing this strong compatibility and providing a service that's really built on and fully exposes these popular file systems, it makes it easy for customers to think through and migrate their workloads over to the cloud. By having the capabilities and the features and the performance profiles of these file systems, what it means for customers is if they want to migrate over to the cloud, they don't have to worry about re-architecting their applications, rewriting their applications. They don't have to think, do I need to recertify my application to use a particular storage service? We've talked to a number of customers with existing applications and workflows. For example, they say, oh, I've been running this on a Netapp system on premises. Will it work with FSx for Ontap? And the discussion we have is, yes, FSx for Ontap is built on Ontap. Provides the same compatibility, the same feature sets that customers are used to. And this makes it easier for them to not need to then recertify all of their applications with a different storage service. And lastly, we talked about the technology around re-architecting and recertifying, but there's also a training component to this. Customers over the years have built up operational practices and training and domain knowledge around running their workloads on particular storage solutions. And by providing those same storage technologies in the cloud as a managed service, for a lot of customers, what that means is they don't have to worry about retraining their staff to learn and use a new technology. So the second piece is cost. We talked about cost is a really important factor for customers as they're looking to optimize their spend and looking to migrate to the cloud. And so FSx, as I mentioned before, offers the broadest range of cost optimization features. As one example, we offer a fully elastic storage tier with Amazon FSx for Netapp Ontap. And what fully elastic means is that as a customer, you actually don't need to provision your capacity for that tier. It automatically grows, automatically shrinks based on the data that's tiered to it. And what that means for you is a couple things. One, you don't have to worry about planning capacity, so there's a peace of mind to it. And the second is you don't have to worry about paying for some amount of provision capacity. You're only paying literally for the storage that you have. And similarly, all FSx offerings offer a native backups feature, and backups are also elastic. Again, you're automatically scale up, scale down, and you don't have to, as a customer, pay for and provision backup storage. All FSx offerings offer some combination of data compression, deduplication, or compaction, which allows you to reduce the physical footprint that your data takes up, and this happens automatically. So you don't have to invest time, build compression algorithms. At most, you're checking a box, and you can benefit from the cost savings of these features, which for some workloads can save you as much as 2/3, 3/4 off of your storage costs. We have automatic tiering between hot and cold data built into the service, and I'll get into this a bit in a later slide. And we offer storage quotas. So with FSx, you can, if you want to control how much storage individual teams or individual users are consuming, you have access to quotas so that you can centrally manage those costs. And lastly, dynamic scaling of performance. And this is going to come up a few times. But as a customer, you can independently provision the level of performance for your storage independently from the amount of storage capacity you consume. And this is really important for customers to optimize their TCO so that as a customer, you can pay for the storage you need and the performance you need without having to over-provision on either dimension. So I'm going to talk through some of the unique cost savings capabilities built into some of the FSx file systems. I'm going to start with Ontap. So with FSx for Ontap, we offer 2 storage tiers. There's a high-performance SSD tier that offers sub-millisecond latencies and is optimized for active data or latency-sensitive data, workloads like databases or small files where latency is really important. In addition, we also offer a capacity pool tier, which is, as I mentioned in the previous slide, a fully elastic tier that's really cost optimized for infrequently accessed data. And with these 2 tiers together, what we see for common data sets, common workloads, is typically for a typical data set, about 20% of data is actually actively used at a given time, and the other 80% is less frequently accessed. So with FSx for Ontap, we actually offer Ontap's rich tiering capabilities which means that as a customer, you can have your data stored in a single volume in a single file system and leverage Ontap's rich tiering features to have your data automatically and intelligently tiered between SSD storage and capacity pool storage. Ontap's been offering tiering between SSD and non-SSD storage for, over a decade at this point, and has built a lot of intelligence and capabilities into this. The tiering algorithms are optimized for file workloads. It's intelligent and bidirectional, which means data is tiered out from SSD storage as it cools down. It also can be brought back into SSD storage as it warms up. And the goal of this feature really is to allow you as a customer to have the majority of your data stored on a lower cost storage option while effectively seeing the performance of all SSD storage. And that's really the power of a lot of the tiering capabilities that Netapp has built into Ontap over the last several years. So, and for a typical data set, if we look at the 80-20 split of data, that actually can save customers about 2/3 off their storage costs. And in addition to this, we also support, as I mentioned earlier, data compression and deduplication, which can also save an extra 2/3 off your storage cost. Again, this is built into the service. It's a checkbox to enable compression. Tiering is automatically enabled. And with these together, for a typical data set, you can actually store your data for a TCO, total cost of ownership, around 3 cents per gigabyte per month. For context, this is about an 88% cost savings relative to just our sticker price for SSD storage capacity. And this is a really big deal for a lot of the customers we talk to. Again, customers are really looking to optimize their storage costs or reduce their storage costs as part of migrating over to the cloud. And just for some context, this 3 cents per gigabyte per month, this is multi-AZ storage, so your storage is replicated and highly available across AZs. It's fully managed storage solution managed by AWS, and it offers SSD level of performance with Ontap's rich features and capabilities, all in for 3 cents. So moving over to another service that we have under FSx, which is FSx for Windows File Server. So FSx for Windows File Server also supports data deduplication and compression. Typical general purpose Windows file share will give you about a 50% savings. And with that, customers are able to achieve a TCO in the range of 6.5 cents for single AZ SSD storage and 11.5 cents for multi-AZ SSD storage. With FSx Windows, about a year or so back, we launched an HDD storage tier that offers much lower price point for workloads that don't require the performance of SSD. And with deduplication and compression, with HDD storage, you can store your data for less than a cent per gigabyte per month with single AZ HDD. So again, with FSx Ontap, we offer powerful tiering capabilities between SSD storage and HDD storage. With FSx Windows, you have the choice as a customer of using SSD storage for higher performance workloads and HDD storage for workloads that don't need SSD. And again, with compression and dedupe, you can save quite a bit off your costs and really optimize for your data set. And then I want to talk about Lustre a bit. So with Lustre, as Ed mentioned, Lustre is really optimized for scale-out, data-intensive, throughput-heavy workloads. And so while the traditional unit for measuring cost in storage solutions is dollars per gigabytes per month, with FSx for Lustre, actually, a metric we often use and then we see customers use is really how much does it cost me per unit of throughput? So dollar per megabyte per second per month. And with FSx for Lustre, we offer a number of different storage options. We have 2 HDD storage tiers, and we just launched earlier today a next generation of Graviton-based Lustre SSD tiers that offer different levels of performance and different levels of price for performance. So with FSx for Lustre, for example, we offer under $1 per hour for every gigabyte per second that you provision with some of our higher throughput tiers. Really optimizing for the cost of high throughput workloads that you can provision storage that not just keeps up with your workload, but also can do so in a cost-effective way. So the third pillar I talked about was data access from virtually anywhere. And I'm going to use FSx for Ontap as an example here. And so with FSx for Ontap, you can access your data from virtually any operating system that's out there. Linux, Windows, Mac OS, And that's because the service supports access from industry standard NFS, SMB, and iSCSI protocols. What this means as a customer is you have the flexibility to access your data from almost any AWS compute service like EC2, workspaces, container services like ECS and EKS, even VMware Cloud on AWS. And what it also means is with FSx, we support with all of our offerings the ability to access your data not just from AWS, not just from the region where you deploy your storage, but you can also use technologies like VPC peering to access your data from other VPCs or from other regions. And you can use technologies like Direct Connect and VPN to access your data from on-premises. And so the goal here is to make it easy for you to access your data from virtually any OS, virtually any client, from virtually anywhere in the world. We also offer a number of caching technologies that make it easy for you to improve your performance if you're accessing your storage from a client that's far away geographically. One example with FSx for Ontap is we fully support a Netapp feature called Netapp Global File Cache. And let me talk a little bit about this. So as I mentioned, all FSx file systems are broadly accessible from on-premises. And we have a lot of customers who are doing this today. You can deploy fully managed storage in the cloud, set up a direct connector or VPN between your corporate network and AWS, and then you can access your data from on-premises workstations, clients, servers, whatever it may be. In addition to this, you also have the option with FSx to deploy an on-premises cache. Completely optional. We have a lot of customers who don't use any caching technologies whatsoever. But what you can do is for example, with FSx for Ontap, you can deploy an on-premises cache for your in-cloud data using either Netapp Global File Cache, which I mentioned on the previous slide, or Netapp Flex Cache. If you have an existing Netapp on-prem array, you can configure it to be a cache for your cloud data. And the value here is what this enables you to do is if you have latency sensitive or performance sensitive workloads, you can move your storage into the cloud. But for those workloads, you can still maintain high performance by having a cache that's on premises. And in a way, you get the best of both worlds. You can have a fully managed, simple storage solution for your data, but still have the benefit of being able to cache your data and drive high levels of performance with low latency wherever your clients happen to be. On FSx for Windows File Server, we also similarly support Amazon FSx File Gateway, which provides similar caching capabilities, again, allowing you to just have lower latency access from on-premises for some of those more latency-sensitive workloads. The other thing I want to talk about, and I talked a lot about characteristics customers look for in a storage solution once they've moved over to the cloud. But I wanted to talk about how do customers span their on-premises environment and the cloud in the first place. So again, using FSx for Ontap as an example, with FSx for Ontap, we fully support a technology called Netapp SnapMirror. This is a Netapp built technology that allows you to easily, quickly, and efficiently replicate your data between Netapp systems. And so if a customer is looking to migrate from a Netapp solution to the cloud, doing so to FSx for Ontap is as simple as setting up SnapMirror and letting SnapMirror replicate their data. If customers are migrating from a non-Netapp solution or are migrating to a different FSx offering, they can also use AWS native services like DataSync. We also see a lot of customers who maybe aren't at a point where they're looking to migrate their primary copy of their data to the cloud. However, a common theme that we see is for some customers, even if they're keeping their primary copy of their data on premises, they would like to be able to use the cloud for disaster recovery as effectively a second copy of their data. And so with FSx for Ontap, again, we support Netapp SnapMirror or SnapVault, two kind of replication technologies. And what this enables customers to do is even if you're looking to keep your primary storage on premises, you can benefit from the simplicity, the agility of the cloud for the secondary copy of your data, rather than needing to maintain a second data center. So this is another common pattern that we see with customers that you're able to take advantage of with the service. And the last one, and Ed alluded to this a bit earlier, is cloud bursting, which is actually, it's a really common pattern we see specifically in areas like media and entertainment or electronic design automation. And the thinking behind cloud bursting is there's a number of workloads where data is generated on premises. In an M&E example, it could be artists generating assets for a movie on premises. And sometimes customers want to process that data, render a movie frame, for example, in the cloud. Leverage the scalable compute of AWS to run that job, but they're processing at the end of the day data that's generated and lives on premises. With FSx for Ontap, a unique capability that we offer is there's a technology built into Ontap called Flex Cache. And what that enables customers to do is if you're running a cloud bursting workload against data you have on premises, you can actually configure an FSx for Ontap file system to serve as a cache for the data you have on premises. And so what this means is you can have your data on-prem, you can have your compute running in the cloud, and you can get even lower latency access to your data and run your cloud bursting workload even faster by having a really fast cache for your data right next to your compute. So I've talked quite a bit about customers who are moving and moving or extending existing applications to the cloud. At the same time, we also see a lot of customers who are building net new data-intensive workloads using Amazon FSx. And if we look back over time, a lot of the majority of applications that have been built over the last several decades have been built around file systems. And there's a good reason for that from a technology perspective. As Ed mentioned earlier, file systems provide native access, shared access, high performance, and also, file systems are just, if I were to be blunt, easy to use. Virtually any programming language natively allows you to read and write files, no extra clients, no extra libraries required. And so building an application against a file API is actually very intuitive and easy for developers to do. And so some of the characteristics that FSx provides that make it easy for customers to use to build new data-intensive workloads are offering high performance. For a lot of data-intensive workloads, performance is key. As a customer, you want to optimize your costs. If you're provisioning a certain number of cores, you want those cores to be working for you 100% and not to be bottlenecked by storage. And that's our goal as providing storage solutions, is to enable you to really take advantage of all the compute you provision. We're continuously improving not just the performance, but the price of our services as well, making sure that we're always providing the right performance for you at the right price. And lastly, with file storage, there are a lot of really unique features that make it easy for developers, for research scientists, for data scientists to experiment with their data at scale really easily, that we see a lot of customers taking advantage of and leveraging with FSx. So first I'm going to start with performance. There's generally, when we think about our services and when we talk to customers about our services, there's generally two categories of services in the file space. There are scale-up file systems and scale-out file systems. In the scale-out space, Lustre is a scale-out file system, which means it's really optimized to deliver the highest levels of aggregate storage, aggregate throughput, aggregate IOPS. And in doing so, it provides virtually unlimited throughput for your workloads. Scale-up file systems, on the other hand, are really optimized to provide the lowest possible latencies. We talked about latencies in the low hundreds of microseconds, which is really important for small files, small I/O, transactional workloads that typically run against scale-up file systems. So from a performance perspective, all FSx offerings are built on top of the latest AWS compute, disk, and networking technologies. The goal here is to provide customers ever-increasing price and performance for their workloads. And in doing so, we're designed to provide massively parallel access to your data with all of our FSx offerings. You can access your data from tens, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands even of cores simultaneously. That's what shared file storage is built to provide. With our scale-out file system with FSx for Lustre, if you need to, you can drive up to multiple terabytes per second of throughput and up to millions of IOPS. And with our scale-up file systems, you can get the lowest possible latencies, hundreds of microseconds of latencies. Again, really important for transactional workloads, latency-sensitive workloads. And the goal here is, regardless of the type of application you have, some applications are very throughput-heavy, others are really I/O-bound and latency-bound. Regardless of the type of application you have, our goal with FSx is to provide you with the file system options needed so that you can run your workload as quickly and efficiently as possible. The other piece is continuous improvement of price performance. And these capabilities, for the most part, when we first launched Amazon FSx 3 years ago, for the most part, these capabilities are ones that we added to the service over time. And we're going to continue adding new price performance improvements as time goes on as well. So as one example, and we saw this in the previous slides, you can choose from different storage types, whether it's SSD storage or HDD storage. We have a capacity pool storage tier. And the goal here is so that you have the option of the right storage media for your workload. We also offer automatic tiering with FSx for Ontap so that you can have just the portion of your data that's hot stored on SSD storage and save money on the rest of your storage that does not need SSD level performance. All of our offerings support data compression, deduplication. These are built in so that as a customer, you don't have to worry about trying to compress your data to save costs. It's done automatically. Provisioning and scaling performance independently from storage. Again, I know I mentioned this earlier, but you can, with the service, you can provision your SSD capacity and you can provision your performance as 2 separate dimensions. So depending on your exact workload's I/O patterns, you don't have to worry about overpaying on either one of those 2. With FSx for Lustre, we offer low price for throughput, as I mentioned, under $1 per hour for every gigabyte a second that you provision. And lastly, for all of our SSD and HDD storage options, there are no request costs. You provision a level of storage, you provision a level of throughput, and you can drive your workload without worrying about paying per read operation, per write operation. Your file system is yours to use. And the goal here is really to make sure that regardless of your application's I/O patterns, that you're able to run your workload with optimal cost, with optimal TCO for your storage. And last one in this area is easy experimentation at scale. There are a lot of really unique capabilities built into file system technologies like Ontap and OpenZFS that make it easy for developers or for research scientists to play with their data, to test their data without having to do a lot of heavy lifting. One example is snapshots. So as an example, with FSx for Ontap or FSx for OpenZFS, you can click a single button, take a snapshot of a volume or a file system, which is effectively, it's a view into the point in time, into the data that you had in that volume at that point in time. And you can then run a workload. You can modify the data, you can overwrite the data, but at any point in time, you can go back to that snapshot, click a single button, and completely restore your volume to that previous state. Really powerful technology if you're looking to develop and test and iterate quickly on data sets without worrying about overwriting what you may have had before. You can also clone data instantly. You can clone data within a file system. You can also clone data across file systems, across regions, even if you want to. And for example, Ontap offers a flex clone feature, and with OpenZFS, you can also clone your data. And what this enables you to do, we see this a lot with, for example, database workloads. You might have a database file, and you may want to test something out. But if you're running a production database, rule 1 of operations is you don't test in prod. And so what you can do, and this is something we see Ontap customers doing a lot, is you can take an instant clone of your database volume, run that test that you want to run against your clone. If it's successful, you can delete the clone, run it against the production version. And clones, you can take them with the click of a button. The way that cloning works, and it's a really powerful capability, is it actually doesn't take any time to create a clone. The file system automatically manages tracking which blocks are associated with the original volume versus the clone volume. And so it's a really quick, efficient way to experiment with data. Click a button, snapshot, click a button, take a clone. You can, again, mess with these clones, mess with these snapshots. It's all server side. So from an application perspective, you click a few buttons and you can easily copy your data, clone your data, test your data without risking availability or without risking overwriting the data that you have. And lastly, and this is something that's specific to FSx for Lustre, we see a lot of customers who are using Amazon S3 to store large volumes of data. But very often customers have file-based applications that they're looking to run. File-based applications, either existing file-based applications or they're developing net new applications. And so with FSx for Lustre, one of the unique features that we've built into the service is that you can actually link your file system to a bucket and effectively use your file system to give your file-based applications access to your data that's in S3 but through a native file system interface. So we see a lot of customers store data long-term in S3, and if they want to run a compute job, spin up a Lustre file system, link it to that bucket, mount that file system from their clients, and now you're processing S3 data using a file system without having to do any translation, any copying yourself. It just works. And the goal here is really to make it easy for customers, for developers, for data scientists to build and run data-intensive applications at scale, and to enable experimentation. Again, being able to clone a data set, snapshot a data set, means that you can play around with data without worrying about losing something or overwriting something. Just makes it more agile for customers to develop workloads, develop applications, given some of the technologies built into our offerings like Ontap. So I've talked a lot about moving and extending existing applications and also building applications, building net new data-intensive workloads. The last thing I want to touch upon really quickly before handing it off to Norm is to talk about some of the fully managed capabilities of Amazon FSx. So FSx is an AWS service. It's a fully managed service, which means that as a customer, you don't have to worry about managing the underlying infrastructure, the disks, the storage controllers. You don't have to worry about managing the underlying storage controllers or taking backups or upgrading or patching your software. It's all managed by FSx. And the goal here is we want to make it easy for anybody to take advantage of the powerful file system technologies that FSx offers without having to manage the infrastructure that's actually powering your storage. And so as one example of how FSx makes it easy for you to automate the management of your data, you can launch and scale your file system in minutes. You go to the FSx console, click a couple buttons, and within a couple minutes, you have a fully running Windows, Lustre, Ontap, OpenZFS file system in your account that you can mount, start accessing from your clients. It's that simple. We offer a number of different replication options, for example, single easy options, multi-easy options. But with all of them, FSx manages behind the scenes the replication of your data. And in some cases, for example, with our multi-AZ products, automatic failover of your data across AZs. And what this means is that as a customer, for example, if you're creating a multi-AZ file system, you don't have to worry about configuring replication or monitoring replication or configuring failover across AZs. FSx provides an endpoint that's designed to be highly available across AZs, and you mount it. And we take care of the failover, heart beating, replication, all of that behind the scenes. We offer automatic backups and maintenance. We're constantly updating and patching your software that's running on your file systems. And we're also, with all FSx offerings, we automatically take daily backups for you. And you can also take backups at any time. And lastly, encryption. All data in Amazon FSx is encrypted at rest. And you can also enable encryption in transit. The goal with all of this is to make it easy for you to deploy your storage and run your storage. As a customer, what customers tell us is they want to focus on spending time on their applications, spending time responding to their business needs, rather than spending time figuring out how to manage or deploy or run different storage solutions. So our goal here is to make it easy. Make it easy. Click a few buttons, deploy a storage solution, and have FSx take care of the rest. And last piece I want to touch upon is security. Which is a really big part of where we invest as a service team, and also is something that a lot of our customers are always looking to increase and improve over time. So with FSx, as I mentioned, your data is encrypted at rest, and we support encryption in transit. If you have an existing Active Directory or LDAP, you can join your file system to these data stores as well to provide user authentication using your existing user-based policies. We support file-level permissions, so you can set POSIX permissions on files with our Linux-based offerings. You can set ACLs or access control lists with our Windows-based offerings. With Ontap, you can do both. And so, any permissioning scheme that you're used to with your existing file storage solutions, you can use with FSx. We support file access auditing, so you can audit the changes that users make to the files in your file system. And with FSx for Ontap, we also integrate with third-party antivirus products. Ontap has a feature called vScan where you can actually configure automatic on-demand antivirus scanning. as you're running your workload, as your users are accessing data. The service is broadly integrated with services like AWS IAM, so you can configure who can manage your file system and who can't. And you can also control network traffic access using VPC security group rules, network ACLs, all of these native AWS concepts. And lastly, FSx as a service is designed to be compliant with a bunch of industry standard compliances like PCI, ISO, SOC, etc. And the goal here is, again, from a security perspective, just like on the management piece, we want to make it easy for you to meet your organization's compliance needs by offering these capabilities built in. So with that said, I've done a bit of talking, explaining some of these concepts. Ed has as well. I would love to bring up onto the stage now Norm Nato from Pearson to talk about his firsthand experience using Amazon FSx for Netapp Ontap for one of his workloads.
Hello, everyone. My name's Norm Nato. I am the Vice President for Site Reliability at Pearson. And today I want to share with you our experience using FSx for Ontap for our ERP implementation at Pearson. I also want to share how we plan to use FSx to really simplify a lot of our future cloud migrations. But before I do that, I just want to give you a quick intro of what we do here at Pearson. We are one of the world's leading learning global companies, and we build and operate some of the largest and most comprehensive learning and assessment platforms in the industry. We also are one of the biggest educational content providers in the world. We employ over 20,000 people across almost 200 countries. We're building new educational experiences every day. We're reaching out to millions of students and delivering that content every day. And we really believe that education is a very powerful and positive force for change. And that's why one of our goals is to be able to reach and help students no matter where they are in the world. And AWS has been a partner in that since 2012. And since in that time, we have operated and built and migrated hundreds of workloads in AWS. And I would say this ERP implementation would rank as a relatively large and complex workload that we've migration. So TEP, the enabling program, is really our code name for our internal name for our ERP implementation. And before TEP, we actually had dozens of ERP systems running across the enterprise, ran by multiple divisions. And that really made cross-cutting solutions that went across divisions really difficult to implement for us. So in 2016, we decided to unify that ERP implementation. We were successful with that unification in 2017, but we actually deployed that to a managed data center. We had some issues with our vendor. So in 2018, we decided to move that to AWS. In 2019, in Q1, we were able to move that or migrate that into AWS. But as you imagine, one of the challenges that we had in doing this migration was really handling the NAS requirements across both the web tier and the application tier. We had distributed processing requirements that we had to handle, and we also had centralized static content that we had to maintain. And so at the time, we had limited options in terms of how we wanted to implement this. So the team decided to go ahead and do a combination of EBS volumes that we would distribute and replicate, and also our own NFS implementation. This worked for us in terms of meeting our performance SLAs, but it had trade-offs. So basically what we had to do was we had problems with the actual release process. It really complicated our release patch process because of all the replications that we were doing, and also managing your own NFS has a lot of operational overhead. And so luckily, or fortunately, FSx Ontap was made available to us. And we knew right away that this was really the service we were looking for. Right away, we could see once we rolled that out that our application jobs were running 3 times faster. Our cloning and refresh speeds were 10 times faster, and our backups were quicker. And of course, our whole patch process was simplified. And by doing that, we actually reduced our RPO times from hours to minutes. Also, by not replicating content everywhere and taking advantage of the compression and the deduplication that Ontap has to offer, we were able to really greatly reduce our storage footprint and our overall price or our cost. Now, the team was able to roll this out in about 2 months. And we rolled this out with the application team. Now, this application team, these aren't storage experts. Matter of fact, they've had no experience using Netapp at scale. But that was okay. This is a fully managed service, so they were able to easily define and deploy and tune and operate this file system at scale. So FSx Ontap was really the service that we were looking for quite some time, because, like I said, it offers all the capability that Netapp has to offer, and it's fully managed by AWS. So we can scale to gigabytes per second, hundreds of thousands of IOPS, integrates directly with IAM, so you can control your own security policies, integrates with KMS, so you can manage your own encryption keys. It actually provides compression, deduplication, compaction, virus scanning. It gives you really robust DR backup capabilities with SnapMirror and SnapVault. And of course, it gives you really high performance remote access capabilities with FlexCache. So with all that said, we now have the capability to move data center workloads without having to redesign or re-architect the storage layer. That's a big deal for us. And also, it presents opportunities for us to look at different hybrid solutions that can help us remediate maybe some of the storage issues that we have on-premise. So what's next for us really is to look at DR solutions that allow us to leverage things like Direct Connect with SnapMirror for, like we said, making DR solutions for our on-premise storage. Kind of reverse of that, we're also looking at ways to do a production volumes in the cloud and have on-premise data or workloads access those data volumes using FlexCache. We're actually looking at improving dev and test processes by leveraging FlexCone. And like I said before, now we're able to take workloads that we wanted to move, but we kind of put in a backlog because we knew they were going to be complicated in terms of time and risk because of the storage architecture. And now we're able to kind of move those up and actually get those done because FSx for Ontap just gives us that capability just to move it as is without changing that storage structure. So with that said, I would say that to close, FSx gives us a lot of opportunity, and we couldn't be happier with FSx Ontap. And so what I want to say is thank you all for listening, and I'm really excited about what FSx has to offer in the future. And so at this point, we're going to go ahead and just bring it to the FAQ session.
So if folks have questions, feel free to just shut them out. If not, we'll be here for a little bit afterwards as well, so we can talk one-on-one.
I had a question regarding the hard drive versus the SSD. You guys made a component that allows us to switch between the two in the Windows file or FSx instances?
Mm-hmm. So is the question, do we have that component?
Move from the hard drive
I see. Okay.
to SSD or vice versa, because that's some of the
Got it.
problems we had when we started architecting out was we realized probably went too fast.
Yeah.
The SSD probably needed to measure
I see.
IOPS and everything.
Yep, makes sense. So I'll repeat the question because we're doing a video. So The question is on FSx for Windows File Server, you have a choice between SSD and HDD storage. Do we have the ability or an option for a customer to be able to switch between the two without needing to copy their data from one to the other or restore from a backup? The answer is today we don't. It's a question or request that we get from customers for sure. So it's something that we're looking at. It makes a lot of sense in terms of the value for it. So I would just say, we're definitely looking at it. Sure. Yes, please.
With the OpenZFS FSx thing that got released just now, is there any plans to eventually support ZFS replication between on-prem and AWS?
Sure. So I'll repeat the question. For the FSx for OpenZFS file system that we just launched today, is there a plan for us to support replication between on-prem and AWS? So what I will tell you is the spirit of what we've built and our goal with OpenZFS is to unlock the full potential of OpenZFS and make that fully available. So being able to replicate between, for example, on-prem and AWS is something that would fit into the way that we look at the service. So yes, that's definitely something that we're looking at. Would love to talk with you later about kind of the needs there, if it's a one-time import or if it's something broader than that. But that's definitely something that we are looking at. Yes. And I think we actually are at time.